if I don't get my stuff together, these people are gonna die.
What is your relationship with time?
Be curiously naive as to like the wonderful things that can happen.
Or what was the value of that to you?
Welcome to the Invest This Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Bauer. I've been a real estate investor here in Phoenix for over 12 years, doing everything from wholesaling to fix and flips and apartment syndications. But the reason I started this podcast is because I believe that investing is about more than the money. Whether that's how to get closer to your family, to become a better leader, or to be more intentional with your health, I'm always trying to improve. My goal for this episode is that you get one thing that you can immediately invest in your life or business to get at least 1% better. So happy that you're here. Now let's get into it.
Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of the Invest This Podcast. Of course, I am your host, Scott Bauer. Today, we have the Pulse Group CEO, I guess, Raphael Cortez. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for the invite, man. I appreciate it.
Excited to get in here and talk to you. It's been several years since last time we've been able to hang out, chat.
Yeah.
Tell me what's going on. Tell the listeners what's going on. Who are you? What are you doing?
Heck, last time we talked, or we sat down and actually chopped it up, was, it had to be, 2020 or something like that?
Yeah.
We were going so
Probably.
it's been a minute. From that point forward, dude, just growth. We scaled. We were doing business in multiple states now. It's been a wild ride over the last 5 years, and I think for a lot of the guys in our space, right? Like you've seen over the last 4 years, there's this hockey stick effect that just kind of kicked in, and
right,
and a lot of people have capitalized on it. So yeah.
So let's break that down a little bit more. So you've scaled. What did you scale? What did you start with and what did you scale?
So I own three businesses. I'm a real estate coach. I own a wholesale and fix and flip business. That's another one. And then I own a real estate brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a lot. So this, what I did over the last, I want to say maybe 6 to 8 months, I got really intentional about honing the systems and the processes on the wholesaling business. So because we broke into different markets, and it's just like the way you do business in one market is going to be different than the way you do it in another county, right, or another state. I ventured out. We hit a wind, challenges and whatnot. This, sort of a wind tunnel right there in terms of chaos, and started adjusting and fine tuning everything. So went through it. The pains of growing, right, per se. But yeah, it's right now it's pretty solid. It's pretty it's a pretty well fine-tuned operation in terms of automations and systems and processes in place.
So obviously, are you talking about on the wholesale side only?
Yeah,
like wholesaling, acquiring off-market deals,
right?
Trying to go in other markets, other areas. Are there specific ones that you're in, or is it just kind of wherever? Is it a nationwide wholesale operation?
So yeah, good question, man. I think you have to pick your markets, man. Like if you start kind of throwing spaghetti on the wall, you might get, depending on the marketing that you're doing, you might get hits and a lot of properties that come through, but they're going to be really hard to sell. Sure. Because the demand is just not in those areas. You get, properties in the middle of nowhere, or, you've seen it 1,000 times, right? So I did the shotgun approach at first. I was like, shit, man, this is not going to pan out too well. So then I started getting more intentional about the areas, right? So I started doing research. We opened up in 20 different counties. Basically I started looking at places that have population over 300,000 people in there. And then I looked at days on market, to see the supply and demand, just kind of gauge the interest and the growth, right? If it was a growing economy or a decaying economy, there's cities and counties in the country that are decaying. They're going on the negative space. So you don't want to necessarily do a lot of business or marketing in those areas, right? You want to go to the places that are growing. So that was part of it, right? And I started, looking at a couple different counties. We started doing really good in Florida. Went deeper in the Florida area, which is Tampa. We went all the way up to the Panhandle, Jacksonville. Do a lot of stuff in Texas, Indianapolis. It's also another market that's streaming as well.
So super green. Yeah. Indy's a really good spot you can buy rentals there that still makes sense, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
I guess, are you going PPC only? Are you going all online marketing, try to acquire these deals?
I've always been a cold calling dude. We still have cold callers in place, but they're like niched out on just certain campaigns. Like we're hitting an AI list. We're not going the absentee owner, the broad, to the masses anymore. it's more of a targeted approach again with cold calling and SMS and outbound reach.
That's still working.
Yeah,
still
yeah,
working.
yeah. To a degree, it's not working the same way as it used to. But I
Right.
like to keep it alive because of if you get really good data, niched out data, you can still get leads that come through it, and it's not a very expensive campaign.
Right. There's a lot of man hours to get it done though. I mean, somebody that's on the phone. I guess if you're going more niche.
Well, you can get it done. You can get it done with a couple of VAs.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's nothing too crazy, right? And because I already had the system and the SOP for it, I mean, it's just rolling out a new list and having a couple of callers there that will, self-liquidate their payroll
Sure.
inevitably throughout the year, right? So it ends up being a value add, but I feel you can't have it as a cornerstone, marketing strategy anymore, right? Because I mean, it's just. It gets there's better ways of doing it with less brain damage, in my opinion, right?
Have you had TCPA violations at all, or had any issues with that?
I had one where they did take me to court. I won though because they
Really?
yeah because they were leading us on. So I mean they had this whole. There's people out there actually teaching.
For sure.
Teaching how to sue, the people that call, somebody that's soliciting and whatnot. So, anyways, those, we got caught in that noise. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't terrible, thank God. And I mean, we just, got it handled. So, and I've always been really good about recording, about permission, about, compliance and that sort of thing. There's only so many things that we can do, of course.
Right.
Right. So
Right,
there's
right.
always going to be like something, right? It's like, it's a little gray, but yeah, for the most part, I mean, we do everything we can to stay on the positive side of it. But yeah, I mean, it hasn't been too terrible. Now we did not switch, but we leaned a lot harder into PPC campaigns. And I mean, I'm telling you, man, like if you're rolling out PPC and that's going to be your thing, you're committing to it, you better have budget for 6 months.
Yeah.
You better have a budget for at least 6 months to run it because it gets rough. You're gonna see like, oh man, the leads are not hitting. Like all we're getting is like stupid forms, stupid leads, and it's like, man, this is not the
And
way.
you're just watching the ad spend go out, you're like, oh,
yeah,
man, every time you're like,
it hurts,
I
it
get
hurts.
that.
But then all of a sudden, dude, I mean, I don't know what it is. Like it's
You learn.
You learn, but it also, I mean, it just turns on at some point, and then boom, you see the leads just start unloading. I think yesterday we had. I don't know, maybe about 10 or 15 leads that came through, PPC stuff.
That's still, I mean, that's a lot. How?
Yeah.
I mean, do you have a large team of people that are running this with you, or that?
No,
you
so
have?
we brought a in-house. So we hired a guy. I mean, he has a background in PPC and just other verticals, not necessarily real estate, but he knows the frameworks, the structure, and all that stuff. It's like, all right, cool, let's plug into this, and then started kind of learning the negative words and the keywords and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's a whole other business to learn, right?
100%.
Yeah,
So-
that's definitely one of those things that is like, who, not how. Like,
Right.
I don't want to deal with that.
Right. 100%. But what about the sales guys then? So
Yeah.
then you have a sales team that's on the phone, or is this back to the VAs to try to get them,
Oh, no. So inbound traffic, it goes straight to my acquisitions team.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and they're right there expecting, the calls come in, everybody and their mom gets notified. Acquisition team gets, text messages, they get an email, they get a notification via CRM. Like I get the same stuff, so
You can kind of stay on top of it.
Yeah, and the ops is pretty dialed in. We're tracking all the calls, the time to respond, and all that stuff is it's pretty healthy too. So
so let's talk about the staffing side. So on the sales team, have you had turnover? Has it been an issue like building out that team of people?
Yeah.
Is it, because that's always been my big thing is I've had troubles with hiring sales guys that want to stay, right? They feel entitled, or they just don't have the grit to go get it done. That's really been probably in my own way, to be honest, but that's an issue that I've run into.
I think that's the nature of a good sales, rep, right? Like there has, like, okay, we're good at selling, and inevitably you have like that desire to keep crushing it, especially if they choose commission when you're hiring. It's like, oh, okay, you know, this person has, you know,
the grit to do it.
Yeah, exactly. They have the grit, right? They're oriented. So don't be surprised if it comes down to it's like, oh, I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna start my own thing. It's just like it's part of the psychological wiring.
Yeah.
But I feel like we also need that factor, right? I what I did is actually two of my guys, so my dispo manager and my acquisitions manager, we used to work together at the fire department back in the day.
Okay.
So we go back 20 years, dude, and
so you know these people, right?
Yeah.
Like you were able to have that previous relationship.
Yeah, the previous relationship before they hopped on, though, like I was seeing turnover. I was, you know, because of one, it's nice and fun to do it when things are easy.
Yep.
I mean, go back 2021, 2022,
Yeah.
and then, you know, the belt gets a little tight, and it was like, oh, deals are not moving as quick.
Yep.
It's getting, you know, I'm getting yelled at by sellers. I'm getting screamed at by buyers, and then, you know, people just kind of lose the teeth per se, right? So that's really when I've seen attrition, you know, go through it. I think as entrepreneurs, we have our responsibilities to keep the team, you know, consolidated and going, right, and motivated. That's one thing, but also having faith in that ultimate vision, knowing that there's ups and there's downs whenever you're going through something like this. Right. Our industry is volatile as heck,
100%.
man.
Sure, it is. And also providing value or showing value to those people that are into your organization, that there is a path for them to go to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. Okay, so what like you have the acquisition team. Do you feel like there's a slowdown right now? So I mean, we're in August 1st today.
Yeah. I felt it over the last couple of months, really.
Yeah.
Like that's when it kind of, you know,
got weird.
Yeah, it got
for
weird.
Sure.
You know, 6-digit months, you know, through, you know, the first half of the year, and then we hit June, right?
Yeah.
Everybody goes on vacation and all that stuff. That's a norm. So we've always seen summer as like, okay, it's gonna slow down a bit. But you throw, you know, into the mix, you know, the rates and, you know, the political climate and all, you know, all kinds of just weird shit that, you know, that's going on right now. At a societal level, like it's gonna impact the way people think. So I feel
Dude,
like
the world is weird.
Yeah, it is. It truly is.
Like there's no other way to put it. I try to make peace with it, but it's like it's weird.
It is. It's hard to understand.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a thing. When we have, I think like we're risk takers, right? By default, but when we know what kind of risk we're taking, like, all right, we're okay taking action. And I feel like the thing that's holding people back or has people just kind of sitting on the you know, as bystanders or the, you know, investors,
sure,
you know, and buyers specifically, it's not knowing what's going to happen. When you know, like the devil that you're dealing with, like, all right, cool, I can strategize again, whatever, right? And then you take some action.
Right.
But right now there's not that degree of knowingness yet. So
still a lot of uncertainty. A lot of uncertainty within the marketplace.
So yeah, I mean it's happening. We went back to the drawing board actually to because guys, like, track your KPIs. Like that's all I'm gonna say. So I'm gonna go
know
into,
your numbers. Know your numbers.
Yeah, know your numbers. Track your KPIs. I'm not gonna go into this whole rant of you know ops and systems, but I'm that guy. And but it's when you have the ability to see like, okay, this is the trend, this is what's happening now, and this is where we're headed. We keep the same trajectory. Like you're able to adjust before shit happens, right? So we saw that, and it's like, man, I got to go back to the drawing board. It's getting really, you know, it's gonna get gnarly here in the next, you know, month and a half, 2 months.
Yep.
If we keep going, you know, this same way with the same type of you know deal structure that we have, so it's uncomfortable. We had to tweak the conversations. We had to tweak the numbers, offer thresholds on the acquisition side, dispo thresholds for the buyers, especially going into all these markets and trying to making it evergreen was a bit challenging. But it's stuff that you have to do to roll out effectively.
You have to be able to pivot and try to change as the marketplace changes, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
That's literally what happens. So, are the same people that are working the acquisition and disposition here in town also working on the stuff?
Yeah.
Across the country? Have you run into issues like, I don't know, different counties, different laws that are you know, preventing you or making the process harder because there's certain, you know, fence posts you have to go through or whatever? I mean, is there anything like that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, for sure. I mean, there's regulation that's kicking in all over the place, right? I mean, go South Carolina, for example. I mean, now it's illegal to wholesale.
So tell me about that. Like, why is it illegal, and how is it that somebody can, you know, a municipality can tell me that, like, hey, you can't go to that guy
Yeah.
and sell him your property without having
So
representation.
they did an interesting number there. So this I don't know. It was either the state or the Department of Real Estate over there, right? But one of them said, "Listen, I don't have a problem if these guys approve it, but you got to have you have to be compliant in this sense and disclose and do these things." And then the state put a dead end to it and said, "No, you can't do it because you got to have a license. So if they give you a license, then it's fine. You can wholesale. But these guys won't give you a license. Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's a loop, right? So anyways, that's how they're going about it.
It's interesting.
And yeah, I mean it's crazy. So I did have deals. I dropped I think 2 deals when we saw that coming. I was like, man,
I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out. I don't. Yeah, exactly.
Don't have time to deal with it.
This thing's gonna come in if they backdate it or do whatever. Like there may be a way of doing it, but I don't like the deals were not that juicy where I want to take them down by myself and then put them up on the MLS.
I mean, I think that if something like that were to happen here in Phoenix, where they try to say, well, you can't do. Which once again, I don't know how they're going to do that, but they're going to somehow put a stop to it, right? It's like, well, that all that's going to mean is that you got to take down the property first before you resell it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Then you have access to capital, which, in my opinion, that actually would probably be a good thing, right? Because that will wean out the majority of people that don't have access to capital, therefore making more opportunities available.
And
right?
I think we're seeing it to a degree, man. Like the typical. I mean, shit, man. Think back at 2017, 18. I mean, wholesale was a hustle, right? Side hustle. Like that's the definition of wholesale. Like this is your side hustle. Like, this is how you're gonna make money on a side hustle, right? But how do you treat a side hustle? Like it's not professional. There's not there's not a lot of compliance going into it. It's kind of like let's see if it sticks. So what happens when you're dealing with high ticket items like somebody's property, right? Somebody's memories,
right?
So I mean, I feel like the danger is there for things to go south real quick. So we used to see a lot of that stuff. It was like the Wild West, and it progressively started getting a little better in terms of even just culturally, right? Like I feel like now it's people frown upon somebody else, like, hey, listen, I took advantage of this person and I just gave them the lowest offer because they didn't understand the market. Like now if you go to a mastermind where our colleagues are sitting there like, dude, what the hell are you doing, man? Like it's messed up. So I feel like morals and ethics are becoming the cool thing to do now, which is great, right? Because the barrier to entry to wholesaling just allows for that type of bad practice to take place.
For sure, because anybody can come in.
Exactly. And as things tighten up, compliance as well and everything, those who take it seriously and decide to treat it like a business and become professional wholesalers, that's a thing. So they're gonna stick around for the long run, right? So what happens? Relationships are there. There's gonna be money accessible because investors still want to make their 12%, 14%, whatever, right? So if you have access to cash, you're gonna be able to turn that thing. So if it were to hit, and I know that like as a from a first point reference, right? I know that's how friends of mine in South Carolina are doing it. It's like, oh yeah, I just reached out to some friends that had cash and we're taking it down.
That's it,
right? So it's not the end of the world when policy hits. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, man, because I feel like when you're just kind of gunslinging in the Wild West, like there has to be some type of path to follow. It's not crazy.
I agree with that. Question for you, or not question. So like the listeners, they might be. Basically, the way that I operate, right, is the wholesaling or just direct to seller contact is how everything starts, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm going to commit to a wholesale deal like that, for the seller, it doesn't matter whether I'm going to turn around and wholesale it or I'm going to take it down and wholesale it, or we're going to flip it, or I'm going to put it in a rental portfolio, right? It all starts with just directly marketing for off-market
front
deals,
seat, man.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the front seat. You get best opportunities for the deal. Then after that, once you take possession of the deal or take control of it, you then have all the opportunities in front of you, right?
Yeah.
So my process is like we market for off-market deals. I cherry pick the really good ones that I want to keep in flip or put into the rental portfolio.
Yeah.
Do you kind of follow the same thing? Do you have rentals as well that you hold on to, or what are you working at for that?
No, so we did acquire a bunch of properties last year for rental portfolios. We're doing a lot of seller financing type of stuff.
Yep.
We're doing leasebacks on even some of the pre-foreclosure properties that we got last year and whatnot. But I like, to me, just the temperature. It's like I feel like it's a time right now to capitalize and just kind of build a war chest. So
well, that and it just doesn't financially make sense to pull a rental today. I mean, the numbers don't make any sense. Right?
Yeah.
Buying a $500,000 house and it's renting for $2,250 a month. I don't know about you, but that doesn't exactly cash flow.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. At least, I mean, you would have to be very particular about the market where you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. I feel like Maricopa's my backyard, right? So for rentals, it'd be here. And like I'm not doing it. So everything is either a flip or a wholesale for me right now. Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly it. You cannot make it make sense. All rentals that we bought have been acquired in past years. And they're just, they're it's hard to make that make sense.
There is the occasional like killer deal that comes in at 2.5-3% from a seller financing deal that stays in place and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
Because we actively go after. I mean, we go after every type of property out there, right? Every single avatar. But we actively market to foreclosure properties as well. And sometimes those, I mean, they're there.
You can get pick up somebody's. Loan at 2.5% or sub 3%, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, what's the goal? Like, what are you doing this for? What are you building this for?
When I kicked it off, I just wanted to get out of my first business. I had another business before I got into real estate.
That was the systems business, right? You were doing something with systems?
No. It was transportation, non-emergency medical transportation. So I was a firefighter. I became a firefighter when I was 19. During that time, I started messing around with a business plan for a non-emergency medical transportation company. It's a long title for a wheelchair and stretcher patient transport, right? So I was like, all right, cool, I'm gonna launch that thing, and I did, and I kicked that off in 2006. I sold it in 2014. So in the interim, I started just reallocating some of the budget, to real estate. It was like, man, I want to invest in something else.
Sure.
And like I knew how to swing a hammer because I worked construction, growing up and going to college and high school and all that stuff, right? So like, all right, cool, I'll do a flip. And I was like, man, flips, they're taxing, right? Especially when you're doing all the work yourself and everything. You're like, yeah. So I bought 3 properties, and I kept getting the properties from this one same dude. And on the third settlement statement, I don't know what I was looking at. Third settlement, I saw an assignment of $18,000. I was like, "What's that assignment?" And then it was his company, right? Like, dude, what's that thing right there? Like, he was like, "Oh, that's what you paid me for the property." He was like, "That's what I paid you for the property?" I was like, yeah, that was the assignment agreement. And he was like kind of nervous. And I was like, because I think I only made like $9,000 in that flip or something. He made a lot more. And I was like, dude, how do I do that? Yeah, so it just kind of opened up, something different. But, to answer your question, right, like the purpose of it was, I want to do more with less. That was the thought process behind it. And then I got into it. People start reaching out. Hey, can you show me the ropes here and real estate wholesaling and whatnot? So I got into consulting, and then I got into coaching. So one of the things that coaching does, it forces you to hold that space, right, for students. So now it's not just about me and the business. When I work in the business and fine-tune the process, the systems, like try something to see if it really works, validate, vendors and stuff like that.
Sure.
I'm doing that for the business, right? But it's at the base of it, like I have a responsibility to like all the students. So that forces me to hold that space for them, and I get excited about doing and keep just kind of pushing out. It's like, all right, cool, let's see how this operation would work if we were to expand it. How do we fine tune this? We see new issues, we come in and then problem solve.
So how do you allocate the right amount of time for students? Like, do you have them time blocked where you say, hey, for these, because I'm guessing each one of those calls is going to be 30 minutes to an hour?
So I have group coaching, and then I have one-on-one. So my one-on-one, I do cap it. I have 8 students at a time.
Okay.
And we go an hour, once a week, and we hit that for 3 months, right? That's a one-on-one coaching program. Then I do support for a year. But on the group coaching, we have group coaching calls where people we have people throughout. I coach. Yeah, at this point, I coach hundreds of students. So we have, pretty decent size, classes where we just go to town on questions and support calls. I mean, there's a lot of videos that break down everything. So it's a two strategy approach, I guess, when it comes to the education side. But like I said, at the base of it, it's still like the essence is still the same. It just forces you to hold that space.
It probably also, having all the different students that are out there, helps generate new ideas for you, right?
Oh, 100%, dude.
You think of something one way, and then you get 15 other people or however many that say, what about this? What about that? And you're like, oh, yeah, that's how that works.
Yeah, exactly. So you get a lot of knowledge bombs too, because you have to deductive reasoning, right? Like as you're going through the process, it's like, oh shit, okay, I'm doing this way, but they're doing it that way. What if we mix it too, and then you synthesize something? So it becomes a really good. I don't know. I love it, dude. It's like right now it's.
Would you say it's fulfilling?
Yeah, to say the least, man. When you sit down and think about purpose and give that some real thought, right? So I first, I sat down and was like, I kept thinking about me when I was launching my first business and I was 21. I didn't know like anything business related, right?
Right.
And it's like, man, I had so many questions. Like, what if I can inspire somebody to like launch their business and do something? Like, I thought about that. And then the second thing was like, no, what if I can, motivate somebody to just take action? I was like, no, that shit goes away too, like after a week. And like, what if I can empower? Like when you coach, when you actually walk somebody through the process of it, like you're empowering somebody, right? So it's like, give them a fish, you feed them for a day, teach a man to fish, feed them for a lifetime. So it's kind of like, it's that same principle. But again, it works two ways, because my intention when I got into it was like, all right, cool, I'm gonna start coaching, I'm gonna start helping people, and I'm gonna just kind of help them see the opportunity in this area, right? So that forced me to dial in my business. So I dialed in my business. I got more students. Now I started doing business with them. We do JV stuff. I mean, it goes on and on and on, man. It's like the gift that keeps on giving.
I love that.
It really is.
I love that. So I guess, what is your let me ask you a different version of the question, right?
Yeah.
Why do you do the business that you do, right? So this is a different version of it. What is your relationship with time?
We can't control time, right? Like we can control ourselves and our attention during time. So if I feel like I don't have enough time, it's always it always comes back to me, like what am I prioritizing? So one of the things that I consciously do on a regular basis, and if I pull out my phone, I show you the notes, at the very top of everything, I have what's my highest and best.
Yeah.
Like my highest and best. Like right now, my highest and best is not negotiating deals, it's not talking to buyers, and not talking to sellers. Believe it or not, is going in there and then seeing how I can improve the processes so my transaction coordinator can do things more efficiently. So I can leverage other people's times, right? So I can help them thrive and succeed.
Right.
So time really goes down to that. Sometimes I feel like I'm stacked and like I'm back to back on a ton of things. But when you kind of go through the process of screening the stuff that matters, and you think about what's my highest and best, right? Like I guarantee you, like your checklist is gonna come down to 3 from maybe 10 things. So there's gonna be a handful of things, and when I do that, I mean, it just helps me prioritize the actions, right? Like, okay, what matters, right? What's my highest and best right now?
Have you ever read a book called Organize Tomorrow Today? Have you heard of that book before?
I haven't read it. I've heard it.
And the only reason I bring that up is like, it's not highest and best, but it's like, this is, you got to hit 3 things in the day. Basically, it says organize every day with like 3 things you want to get done.
Yeah.
And the number 1 thing you got to get done that day, right? And so that way, even if you have, a stacked day and you have a lot of stuff going on, now this is a way you can organize it and not be so overwhelmed with something, because you can really break a lot of things down into, hey, what's the number 1 thing I have to get done that day? And then, or the 3 actions I need to get done, and out of those 3, what's the number 1?
Yeah.
And as long as you do that, you have a successful day.
Yeah,
so I didn't know if you had any relation to that, but
yeah, no, I haven't read it. I will. I'm an avid reader. But one of the things that just kind of helped me realize that was like, sometimes I would go to bed And I was like, fuck, I'm exhausted, man. I don't know if I did a lot of things or I didn't do anything. I really don't know. It was like, was it all noise?
Dude, that's a real realization. That's for sure. The Investors podcast it's about more than the money, right? Yeah. It's one thing to go and build a war chest of, passive income or active income. You're able to live an amazing life. You're able to help people, through coaching and things like that. That's one thing. But what about the rest of your family? What about the rest of your health? What has building this been able to give you or been able to, provide you with that influence those people around you that are really important?
I can sum it up in this, I guess. I work to live. I don't live to work.
Amen. Yeah.
Right. So yeah. Sometimes we get busy, and sometimes we we got to find that counterbalance. When we're going, super heavy at work, we have to find that one thing that pulls us back, right? And it's, to me, it's always gonna be that personal connection and the reason of why am I doing all these things, right? Yeah. So if I, not that I get irresponsible about work. But do
you feel like you work? Do you work long hours? Do you work longer hours now?
I do. One of the issues that I have is it's hard to disconnect. For example, I have an office, right? I have a home studio, and I can do everything from the house. But when I work from the house, I wake up at 6 and I start hitting it at 6, and I go to bed at 11, right? And I hit it from 6 to 11,
right? Because
that environmental disconnect is not there. But if I go to the office, I step out of the office, it's like, all right, cool, I'm gonna have, I don't know, a coffee with a friend or something, whatever.
Dude,
right?
That was literally why I got this office, because it was like, if I was at home, I was just gonna work 24/7. Then I don't have a good relationship with my wife, my kids, with anything but work. And it's great because you're super productive, or you could be.
Yeah, but still, like that quality of life, right? Like right. We're like you said, there's different areas of life that we have to attend to. You have to, be aware of your physical state, your health, right? Like if you don't have the energy to push through the day, how the hell are you going to be working long hours and be okay with it? How are you going to deal with stress? Just doing a sparring session after a hard day, dude, just does wonders. You know what I mean?
For real.
But stuff like that, and then and then when it comes down to the family, I like to bring my I want to be on the dad Hall of Fame.
How many kids do you
have? 2 boys
you said that earlier.
And a girl. Yeah.
And
yeah.
The youngest is 12?
Yeah, 12, 17, and my daughter's 23.
Okay.
So
23 still in the house, or she gone?
No. She's got her own place. She's her career and everything. Super lucky with my kids, dude. Yeah. And
that's crazy, man. 23, you had to have been young when you had her, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So pretty interesting times. Trying to start businesses and then raising kids.
Yeah.
When you're a kid.
Yeah. Dude. Right.
So yeah, it gets interesting, man. But it's so worth it.
Would you say that so that's actually a really good point. Having your daughter, she's 23. Right. When you were that young, did you have an idea that this was the path you were going to go?
Not at all, bro. Not at all.
But do you think that she had an influence on you going this route?
Definitely, because it's you get to a point where dude, you burn the boats. You know what I mean? Okay, if I don't get my stuff together, these people are gonna die. I'm the head of household. Be a man, be a head of household.
Right.
And there were tough times, dude. I remember vividly, man, when I left the fire department to go all in on the business, that was the scariest thing.
I bet.
Because I was trying to raise a family, and then had this dream of the business. Now I had the imagery in my head. It was like, man, I know I can do it. I didn't know anything about the industry, but I knew I could do it, right? That was the blind faith. And I think we have to be naive to a degree, right, as entrepreneurs.
When you start something new, for sure.
It's be curiously naive as to the wonderful things that can happen. So, but I remember one day, man, I this was really scary, because I was working. I went back to construction. So I left the fire department. I was building a business. Now I had an LLC and a business account. I was a business owner, and I was working construction.
Making no money.
Yeah, making no money. Working construction from 3 a.m. to noon, and just because I had to pay the bills.
Right.
And I was I moved into this little apartment in Maryville. So I couldn't step out of the apartment without a gun, because it's crazy. But anyway, so I had to go to work. and I look out the window and they're repoing my car.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
And dude is like, man, like what have I done? So I look to one side and then, kid's asleep. My girlfriend at the time, she wasn't my wife yet.
Yeah.
And it's like she's there and like and I'm just like I'm freaking out in my head, dude. I was like, man, this is real. Like this is happening. Like where else am I gonna go? Like what am I gonna do? Lay down and die? Like no. So
man up and figure it out.
Yeah, you figure it out. And yeah, I made it to work that day, and it was like, dude, I'm not stopping. I am not stopping. And I feel like when you hit, everybody has their catalyst moment, right? I mean, some people get hit by illness, some people get hit by, whatever, just circumstances. Some other people, like wake up and just automatically just get a realization of, okay, my life has to be better.
Something changes.
Yeah, but there's always a catalyst that kicks in, and I feel like when you hit that threshold, the way that you see life changes.
Yeah.
And the things that used to hold you back or that you thought mattered, were important, were, like, man, they go into, a whole other subset of stuff that it's irrelevant and it's not going to stop you anymore. So
I love that. I mean, that's a really good way to put it. Do you think that you'll go into anything else? Do you think you'll start more businesses or try to transition out of this?
Yeah, for sure. As a matter of fact, I mean, I consult. So my background now, I'm an organizational psychologist, so I consult in different verticals, and the idea is to buy more businesses, get into more businesses, improve, do a value add on the businesses. I don't think I want to start something again from scratch.
Go in and improve process or systems. And put something
exactly.
Back together.
I mean, now I got a hang of that, right? Like when I built that first business, I mean, there was nothing in place. I literally went to the auction and bought my first car, and then when I sold the business, I had a fleet of 30 vehicles, 46 employees, in total, like throughout the entire or the businesses, right? And so it was a growth thing that happened over a period of 8 years. And but like, I mean, that was a lot of work. I got burned out. I mean, it was just so to answer your question, there's stuff that I want to do. I think right now I'm in a very, very playful, enjoyable space, which is, it's coaching, is empowering other people, students, doing, JVing with them. And I mean, just, dude, when you get a testimonial and somebody is like, hey coach, like this happened, like this, I've had people relocate because they had some, great results and whatnot. And like that kind of stuff, it still lands.
It's empowering for you.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't know how much longer I'm going to feel good, about it, and it's going to be fulfilling, because I feel like you always get to a point where it's like, oh, okay. I don't want to get to a point where it's like, oh, it's just another student, right? So
I think it'll probably lead you to the next step, whatever that means, right? So, like natural progression of just how it goes. I mean, that's amazing. And
I think that's going to be it for a time being, man. I just want to do more of the stuff that I'm doing. I just want to do it bigger and better.
Yeah. Give me an example of what that would be.
Yeah.
Bigger and better. Of the wholesale business, of the whole operation across the board.
No, I'm a big believer in themes.
Okay.
So I'll set like quarterly themes, right? Like, what's my theme this quarter? Meaning, what's the big thing? What's the big thing that's gonna take my attention, right? So for example, right, over the last 2 quarters, the theme was to improve the ops and the wholesale business on those virtual markets. So I went to town. And I think where I'm at right now, just doing it bigger and better, is improving the overall coaching process. So
I like it.
The program itself, the sales, it's that's another. It's a whole different vertical, dude. Like, there's so many, things that go into it, levers and buttons that you have to adjust for.
Dude, I don't think people really realize, like, the good thing about starting and running a real estate business, right, is that it's really complicated. There's a lot of moving parts that are there. So if you go and transition from running a real estate business into a different business, you actually are probably light years ahead of that business model, because there's only one thing that they're doing, right? If it's a service and they're a plumber, as an example, and you go into a failing plumbing business, it's pretty easy to find out where the hole is, right? Because you can follow the path of money or the path of the process and say, oh, right here, it's leads, conversion, income.
Reverse engineer.
Right? I mean, it's not that hard to really re-engineer that. So, you know what I mean?
It's funny you say that, dude. In real estate, you have to be an attorney, you have to be a marketer, you have to be a handyman, you have to be like, dude, there's so many things that go into it.
You have to know IT, you have to know systems, you have to know, dude, all of it, right? And it's just, it's a lot. Last thing I want to talk to you about is mentorship. Obviously, I know you had a good relationship with a really good mentor from the beginning when you got into the business.
Yeah.
For me, that was life changing. Like he was a mentor for me as well, and he was somebody that you worked for him for a little while, right?
Sean. Yeah. Oh, absolutely, dude. He's the GOAT. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the GOAT. Right. That's right. But I mean, if you wouldn't have had him, or what was the value of that to you?
Dude, I can't. I mean.
You still talk to him?
Yeah. Talk about 10 years of you cutting the curve, I think. So what happened, I guess, to make the long story short, is I started looking at wholesaling, and I ended up selling the transportation business. So now I wanted to go all into this space. And I was on his email campaigns. Mm-hmm. So he sent out an email. He was looking for an acquisitions guy. I was already listening to his podcast and everything. So I submitted an application. And after a few months, I get a phone call, and I show up to his office. He hires me on the spot. And I had the ego going like 1,000 miles an hour. Like, how am I going to go to work for somebody when I'm a business owner? I've been the owner. I'm like, I grew this business from scratch, and like, I sold it. And it's like, no, man, like, listen, you have to put in the work wherever you're at. If you're new at any vertical, like ego, leave that shit aside.
Right.
But yeah, so I went in there, and that I mean, dude, honestly, I thought it was a blessing because it's I got to see the let me rephrase, right? There was a lot of marketing going out, and I was at the receiving end of all those appointments. So I got tons of exposure. And I feel like that was an unfair advantage because, I mean, I was doing 5 seller appointments, at least 5 a day, face to face. I just going all over town and whatnot. I mean, that's a lot of reps, right? For somebody it's not just phone calls. Like, you're face to face at somebody's kitchen. You spend an hour with them, 2 hours with them. And like, trust me, the conversations are going to get deep. So when you're coming into it cold turkey, like, it's intimidating. But then we had the opportunity to break down like case studies and all kinds of stuff on a weekly basis at the office. And it was I was not being micromanaged, which to me, that's what worked. I was allowed to just kind of, do my thing, and then,
it's because you're performing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
absolutely. Take off and run with it. Yeah. So just having the combination, right, of putting in the reps. And now we say, putting the reps, I mean, pick up the phone if you want to do reps, right? Now it's more common than before. But there's different ways of going about that. But yeah, putting in the reps, going through those conversations, and then seeing the breakdown of solutions and problems, right? Like, that was part of the wholesale stuff. But then when I started going on stage and talking about like the experiences that I was having with buyers and sellers, because he was having events. I mean, that was a whole other, side of it, because I started seeing the back end of the coaching business, the education business. Like, man, if I to be in this, space where I can talk about it, like, I have to dial my stuff in. I have to become a professional. Right. So you start respecting it in a whole different manner, I feel. Man, I'm telling you, like, I have bigger respect for Sean, and like, guy is integrity's there, like, he's his word, and I learned a lot from being in that environment for 3 years, just under 3 years. I mean, the mentorship, and I just feel like it sets everybody up that actually puts, so for you worked for him, right? I got into masterminds where I had to pay to be there, but I was exposed to him. I mean, I knew Sean before that. I think you were working for him when I first met you, right? Probably, if it was sometime
2014.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, so and it was just the same thing. Listening to the podcast, being in the same room as him, and just other mentors as well, gets you in front of, like, I guess where I'm going with this is all the listeners out there that want to get involved, like, get around the people, right? Get within vicinity of these people, because ultimately, if you can do that, your ability to learn just skyrockets, right?
Yeah, it's borrowed perspective, guys. Like, if you don't have perspective, if you don't have that big think, chromosome in you, which I know I didn't, borrow perspective from somebody else who does. Like if you get on those rooms, you're gonna listen to conversations, and then you're gonna be thinking like, man, if this person can do it, like what's holding me back, right? That's gonna be the first thing. The second thing that comes along is like, man, we can do it together. Let's collaborate.
Right.
Let's elevate.
Right.
And that's one thing that I think we've gotten really good about here in Maricopa, like the Guru Central of the world for wholesaling.
Everybody's here.
Dude, everybody's here. And, we see people moving in here. Like now, they're just specifically moving in here because of, that type of environment. But there's a lot of collaboration going on left and right. Just look at social media, man. We're hopping on each other's, the programs and empowering each other's communities and everything. And I think that's the thing. That's the key, right? So putting yourself in rooms like that creates that's a catalyst for that type of performance. I mean, heck, I feel like Brandon Simmons, he was working dispositions, so I was doing acquisitions, he was doing dispo, right? So after I left, Brandon calls me up and he goes, hey dude, I have an idea, I want to put together a mastermind. Have you read The Go-Giver? I was like, no, I haven't read that book. He was like,
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. So he turned me on to The Go-Giver group, or a book, really good. Read it if you haven't read it.
You should read it.
And he goes, I want to put together just a mastermind where we just invite everybody who's doing business, and we sit him out, like hear me out. We sit him out like at this table, and we start asking each other what's working for us, and then we all share with each other like what's working, like what's the secret marketing strategy.
Is he still doing that? Do you know?
He hasn't done the meetup in a while, dude. But I mean, we had that for years. So, dude, honestly, if it had been somebody else, I probably wouldn't have. It was like, oh, that's crazy. It's not. But it's you. I'll go. Right. So it's like, yeah, I'll go. So I show up. That's where Jamil and Pace met.
Right.
I mean, the Steve Trang was part of it.
Yeah.
All these guys.
I mean, I went a few times. Definitely a handful, maybe four or five times. They always have it at
batches to be part of it. And so I mean, we started getting I feel like all the guys that are doing stuff now at some point were part of that Go-Giver group.
Yeah.
And the idea behind it was just to collaborate. Like, it's not that difficult, right? And the crazy thing is, like, we all started doing bigger deals. We all started just, making more money together, as opposed to like, I'm going to hide my strategies and my super secret processes because they're going to steal them. Like, no.
Dude, let's all do it together.
Yeah. So it that works, man. And I mean, that was another game changer for me in terms of perspective. Yeah.
Man, I haven't heard his name in a while. I'm going to actually reach out to him after this, just see what he's up to.
I love that guy.
It's been a while, man. I hope
Brandon,
he's doing good. Well, man, if you can leave the listeners with one thing that they can take away from this, what would it be?
One of my biggest, I guess, one of the biggest ways of, at this point, is a mantra for me, but it's a quote by Paulo Coelho, which is, I refuse to walk carefully through life only to arrive safely at my death. Man, I mean, every time I think about that quote, it just brings me back to the way that I want to live life. Right?
Is that a Four Agreements? Paulo
Coelho? No, Paulo Coelho is The Alchemist. He wrote The Alchemist.
That's right.
The Pilgrimage.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which that book, The Alchemist,
Brazilian,
it's been years since I read it, but it is top notch.
Yeah.
It's been years.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those magical reads, man. I'm not big into fables and fiction and whatnot, but I mean, that book is definitely one of the ones that made a dent.
Yeah.
But yeah, what it is, it's like, why be so guarded and so safe about everything that we want to do as entrepreneurs? If you have an idea, if you have a talent, if you feel like you have something good and beautiful to give out to the world, it's not bragging, right? It's a responsibility to put it out there. Why? Because if somebody picks that up and runs with it and they have the opportunity to improve their lives, you're improving the world. You're leaving the world better than when you came in.
100%.
And I feel like that I mean, that quote just resonates, and it's a very vivid statement of what I feel like how we should live, right?
Yeah.
Take some risks.
Dude, I think that's like one of the best things you could leave off with, right? Yeah. Because to your point, that's exactly right. If you have some gift or something you want to share, it's kind of selfish not to.
Yeah.
Right? Get it out there. Help somebody else.
Yeah. If you're passionate about something.
Yeah. That's it.
That's the cue.
Cool. I appreciate it, man. Good to talk. Good to catch up. We'll have you back here again here in the future.
My pleasure, man. Anytime.
Cool. Like it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Invest This podcast. I know you got at least one thing from this episode, so drop us a like and click the subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. If you have any questions, thoughts, or suggestions for future episodes, make sure to leave us a comment below. I love hearing from you.